Before we get started, do me a favor and smash that like button. I'd appreciate it. Okay, this video is called Yield Farming Too Good to Be True. And when you look at the APY that this particular volt swap pair is paying to liquidity providers, it would appear that way. I mean, it's saying that if you supply liquidity for this pair, you can earn 188% APY. And you can't help but wonder, as I did, how could they possibly pay that kind of return? Why would they pay that kind of return? My grandpa used to say, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And for the most part, I think that's true. But when you look at this, that's your first reaction. But once you understand where that yield is coming from, it makes sense. So I'm going to go into that in this video. So consider this: the volume of swaps that are occurring every 24 hours is incredibly high, and they charge a fee to the people who are swapping one crypto for another, and of every dollar that they collect in fee, they are only paying 0.3 cents to the liquidity providers. That's nothing. The people who are operating or built the Volt Swap or any other DeFi platform for that matter are cleaning up, and they are sharing a tiny amount of the fees that they're collecting with the liquidity provider. But they know that even as small as that amount is, because of the volume, it adds up and allows them to pay those significant APYs, which is what is needed to attract people to provide the liquidity that they do. You're probably wondering, with all the money that they're making, why don't they provide the liquidity themselves and keep that? And the reason is because inventory management is a pain in the butt. So if they can offload that to somebody else for less than 1/3 of 1%, why wouldn't they? I would. Okay, let's talk about some assumptions when it comes to calculating the APY percent figure. There are 3 assumptions. The first assumption is that the volume of trades will remain relatively stable through the course of the coming year. And the second assumption is the liquidity provider will remain staked for the entire year. The third assumption is that the overall size of the pool and the percentage that your liquidity is does not change. Okay, so those assumptions have to be in place. And the reason that they have to be in place is because there's no way for them to know ahead of time what the volume of trades is going to be from one day to the next. They can only assume that what they have been over the previous period is a good indicator that they will continue to be at that level. And the volume of trades is where the fees come from. Every time somebody makes a trade in the specific pair that the liquidity provider is providing, there is a fee, and the liquidity pool receives 0.3% of that fee. So that's number one. Assumption number 2 is the liquidity provider remains staked for the entire time of the coming year. And that is important because when you first join a liquidity pool, your multiplier starts at 1.0x, and it increases over the course of 10 weeks by 1.0 each week. So at the beginning of week 2, it will be 2x. At the beginning of week 3, it will be 3x. The beginning of week 4, it will be 4x, all the way up to 10x at the beginning of week 10. And as long as you remain staked for the entire year, you will be earning 10x rewards starting in week number 10 all the way out to week number 52. So that's all factored into what they give as an estimated APY percentage. So you have to understand that the volume could change, but I've been watching the APY figure over the course of about the last week and a half, and I've noticed that it does change multiple times, but it's not a significant change. For example, the one that I have been in, the range has been whatever they said, plus or minus 2 percentage points. So it's relatively stable. I don't know how many times per day they recalculate it, but I know that it's multiple times because I've watched it change throughout the day. So that tells me that they are re-evaluating based on the volume, but the volume doesn't seem to change significantly, which is reflected in the fact that the APY percentage doesn't change significantly. Another variable to keep in mind is the size of the liquidity pool and what your percentage of the total is. So if your amount of liquidity stays the same, but the size of the pool doubles, that means your percentage of the overall pool goes down, and therefore your earnings would go down as well. Okay, this example assumes that everything remains the same, volume of trades and your relationship in the pool to the total pool size all remains the same. The only thing that changes over time is the multiplier. So in this example, on week 1 with a 1x multiplier, you earn 2 volt. Week 2 with a 2x multiplier, you earn 4 volt. Week 3 with a 3x multiplier, you earn 6 volts. All the way down to week 10, you have a 10x multiplier and you earn 20 volts. And then going forward, as long as you remain staked, you enjoy the 10x multiplier and the 20 volt per week earnings. Now this actually would represent a relatively small amount of liquidity compared to the whole liquidity, like 0.01% maybe. So that's how the multiplier works. Your week 1 earnings would be multiplied by 2x, 3x, 4x, etc., all the way down to 10x. And then as long as you remain staked in that liquidity pool, you would continue earning at the 10x multiplier rate. So hopefully that makes sense. So when you look at the different pairs and they have different APYs associated with them, the higher the APY, that basically translates to higher volume trading within that pair, because the formula is the same regardless of the pair. It's 0.3% of the fees go into the pool for the liquidity providers. So the more volume, the more fees, and the higher the APR, or the APY I should say. So on the surface, it looks too good to be true, but in reality, when you understand how it works, it's not too good to be true. It actually does happen, but there are risks with it. For example, you could be, say, 1% of the total pool in a given pair, and some whale comes in and quadruples the supply within that pair, driving your 1% down to just 0.25%, which means you're earning less. So that's a risk. The same thing could happen in the volume. For whatever reason, the trading volume within that pair could drop significantly. So that's always a risk as well. So there is the risk of what's known as impermanent loss, which there's a number of videos out there that'll explain that to you, but that's a risk as well. So doing this liquidity providing is not without certain risks, but the risks can be mitigated. You just have to keep an eye on it, and if things start going poorly for you, you pull your liquidity and you find someplace else to put it. It's that simple. Well, that's a wrap for this presentation, so cue the music. Well, hopefully this video gave you some information that will help you understand the whole thing, and good luck. And I'm not a financial advisor, and you need to do your own research before you do anything. If you enjoyed the video, then hit that thumbs up for me, and I'll see you in the next video.